Welcome to the Nonprofit World. I'm your host, Robert Goitis, and today I am joined by Ryan Curley from the Carver Litchfield Project. Ryan, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Appreciate it.
Great. So, before we get started, who exactly is Ryan Curley?
I think I'm still trying to figure that one out myself, actually. I'm a rugby player. I have a master's in business administration. I love hiking, but most importantly, I am the proud founder of the Carver Litchfield Project.
Very good. So, what exactly is the Carver Litchfield Project?
The Carver Litchfield Project is what I like to call a personal tour of the American Civil War. So through our research, our team has transcribed hundreds of letters written from the front lines of the Civil War. And these letters bring to light the adventurous and, in some places, heartbreaking story of two Union soldier brothers, Lucius and Allyne, 21 and 26, respectively, at the start of the war.
So, what would you say is this, is the project's overall mission really here?
Yeah. The mission is to share the story of these two Union soldier brothers, Lucius and Allyne. But it's kind of like, what kind of purpose can we give to that storytelling along the way? And to me, I think it's really rethinking the way that we want to have younger generations engage with the past, and in other words, teach history. So I think it's pretty easy to say something like young people don't care about history, or, kind of chalk it up to that the younger generations are unengaged, right? When in reality, what we could be doing is shifting the focus from just sharing facts on a sheet or in a textbook, and putting a storytelling lens on it and meeting them where they are, creating content types that their generation typically engages with, and really try and put it in a lens that makes it not a chore to engage with, but something that's enjoyable, and can teach you lessons without even noticing it.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
And so how did this project get started?
Yes, this is my favorite part. So I'm a Marshfield resident. I've since graduated college. At the time, though, I was on summer break, home for the summer. And I was walking my dog in the Marshfield Hills Cemetery, and I stumbled upon the grave of Lucius Carver. He was a soldier in the 7th Michigan Cavalry, according to his headstone. And it kind of just piqued my interest, like, why was a man in the 7th Michigan Cavalry buried here in Marshfield, Massachusetts? Because I'm something of a history buff myself. I was never really a historian, more just a guy who likes history. Went home, started doing some research, and really, if you talk about just like going down rabbit holes, it was one after the other. Like, found all this information about him and his brother-in-law, Allyne, who lived in Marshfield ahead of the war, and then Allyne and his wife Susan moved to Michigan, and they start a shipbuilding company, and there's a shipwreck, and there's so much, like, it's just rabbit hole after rabbit hole. But essentially, the story led us to hundreds of letters that these two brothers-in-law wrote during the Civil War, back home, to one to their father and the other to his wife. And yeah, I was walking my dog in the cemetery, found the grave, did some research, found the letters, and then at that point it was clear, as like, there's so much here, this can't be left buried. Somebody needs to bring it into the light, and I'm just the right guy, like at the right place, right time, so to say.
You mentioned how you were uncovering letters and everything. Can you tell us a little bit more about, the whole process behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I came to this discovery in the summer of 2023. Went home, did some research, and found that the older brother of the two, Allyne, he had a collection of his letters stored at the University of Michigan library. So I called them up and was essentially like, I need to see these as fast as I can, and I cannot fly to Michigan because I'm on a college student's budget. So can you send me digital copies? And regretfully, they informed me that those didn't exist. So I hired a graduate student, Isaac Bergdorf, who is currently working part-time in the Clements Library at the University of Michigan, to sign out the collection into the reading room and just take pictures of all of them. And Isaac did that for me. And it was my plan to then sit down and transcribe them. And I realized that was a skill set I didn't necessarily have, but I dive into that in a second. Simultaneous to this, I continued my online research. And I found that years earlier in 2017, somebody had asked the same question I had asked. Why are there men from the Michigan Cavalry buried in this random cemetery in Marshfield, Massachusetts? And somebody asked that question, and then another person came in about 3 years later and shared an answer. And that person was Bob Horton. And he, in this brief message, said, "This is Lucius Carver. He was born in Marshfield, Massachusetts." And then he said that he had letters that he wrote during the Civil War back home to his father, Ira. And he mentioned that the letters entailed his favorability or unfavorability with major Union generals, firsthand accounts of battles. He supports Abraham Lincoln for re-election. And now I'm unbelievably interested. And Bob Horton signs his message with, "If you'd like to know more, here's my email." So here I am, years later, seeing this comment, send him 100 emails, and I'm not getting any responses. And I'm just like, I've hit a dead end. I've found what town he's from. He mentions he's from the Cape, and I'm going through obituaries, trying to see if he's passed. I'm calling family businesses with the same name. Nobody really knows who this person is, and I'm pretty much all but defeated. And I'm in my college dining hall around December 2023, and I get an email from him. "Hey Ryan, I'm retired. I'm moving to Florida. I'm also a duck boat captain now. I'd love to let you see the letters. They're at a historical society in Western Massachusetts getting digitalized and transcribed. You can see them when they're done." Beyond happy that he's answered, but now I have to wait. And after this time goes by, he eventually gets them back, and the Historical Society, for whatever reasons, was not able to finish the project. So Bob and I worked out an agreement where my alma mater, Endicott College, would temporarily host the letters, and not in any sort of display, but they would keep them in a private collection that I would have access to go to digitalize and transcribe, on the condition that when we finished, they'd be sent to the University of Michigan library where the older brother's letters are, so the two could be together permanently. And I guess I'll just keep going. Like, we went to Endicott College. We stored them there for a couple months. Sydney, our chief curator and historian, went through all of them, took pictures of everything, digitalized the collection. So now, no matter what happens, these letters will never be lost to history. And now our team is actively working on transcribing them, and we've sent them to the University of Michigan. And Isaac, who's still on our team now as a member of our transcription team, has confirmed that the letters have found their final resting place alongside the brothers.
Sounds like a lot of good luck happening on your part so far.
Right? Yeah. And it was funny. I thought that this was a quick project. I thought, like, okay, I did some research. Lucius Carver, Allyne Litchfield. I found pictures of them, and I thought it was just going to be like a little blog post that I'd put up. And I went back when I was writing the post. I went in to go find the pictures again, and then I uncovered one thing, and then the other, and then the other. And I thought we were going to do one of these a week, and here we are over a year later, still plugging away. But so the luck has definitely prolonged the amount of time it's taken to do it, but it's also really helped us with the size of the project and helped us realize, like, these are two people's lives, like two people's lives in America's most divisive time, like our national low point. Like, it's silly to think that you could wrap that up in a nice bow and in a simple blog post.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that actually brings us to perhaps like the meat of the to the meat of this whole thing today. So could you perhaps tell us, like, the story of these two brothers-in-law?
Happily, yeah. And I'll try and do it in a timely manner, too.
It's okay. No, it's okay. Take your time.
So, I mean, they're real people, right? This is 100% true story. But I do like to approach it with a storytelling lens, because that's what it are. Like, you and I each have stories that eventually in the future somebody might come across, or they might not. We never know. But so to start with the storytelling lens, I think it's best to look at our protagonists. And that's Lucius Carver, Susan Carver, and Allyne Litchfield. Now, Allyne is the oldest, and he is married to Lucius's older sister, Susan. So Allyne is the brother-in-law to Lucius. Allyne, born in Hingham, Lucius and Susan, born to Ira and Susan Sr. in Marshfield. So Lucius is a student in Boston. Based on census records, we know he's in school, and then after he graduates, he's a bookkeeper. Allyne and Susan have connections in the shipbuilding industry. Susan's father, Ira, works in the Boston shipyard, and Allyne's brother-in-law on his other side, Donald McKay, is also a notable shipbuilder. And he recognizes Michigan, which is at the time like the American West, which is funny to think about. He recognizes Michigan and the immense amount of lumber and timber that's now being shipped back east from there is a potential gold mine. And he's not the most wealthy man, so he really kind of risks it all in like kind of like a risky startup, if you think of it like that, and invests in this steam-powered shipbuilding facility. And it goes well. He makes some powerful friends. He joins the Michigan Republican Party, which at the time obviously is very pro-union. They've elected Lincoln to represent their party and run for the presidency. And after this, war breaks out. The southern states secede. They obviously see the country is trending in an anti-slavery path. It's trending in an anti-slavery path. Southern states secede. They fire on Fort Sumter. They muster armies. Lincoln responds. And Allyne Litchfield joins the 5th Michigan Cavalry, and after that has too many men in its ranks. They form the 6th and the 7th Michigan Cavalry, and he is transferred there, where he finds himself as colonel. And he's colonel of this regiment, serving under famed General George Custer, who most people know from his infamous Last Stand at Battle of Little Bighorn. Most people don't know is that before that, he was a hero of the American Civil War. So we have Allyne fighting under General Custer at the Battle of Gettysburg. We have a first-hand account that we've read and transcribed of his horse being shot out from under him and narrowly being trampled by these two walls of swords and guns and horses coming together. And all while this is happening, Lucius is still back home in Boston. He's only 21 years old at the time, but he sees all these other young men joining up, and this war is really being sold to him, kind of like if you're familiar, like All Quiet on the Western Front, like in that sense where war is being missold as like an adventure and something like you do with your friends and fellowship. And unfortunately, Lucius bites. We have transcribed in a letter where he writes to his sister Susan that he wished he had gone with Allyne and that he's getting a little war fever on. And this is the first time we see Lucius like really show interest in the military. So through some pieces we're still trying to put together, we know Lucius ends up in the 7th Michigan Cavalry. He likely enlists in Boston, and then having a brother-in-law as a colonel is able to pull some strings. Pretty soon the two of them find themselves side by side on horseback fighting to preserve the Union. And there is this immense sense of pride and preservation of America and its ideals, and these are something that these men care very deeply about. And there's a lot of animosity and disdain towards the southern states, and a lot of questioning as in like why would they do this? And they are very religious based on the time, and they feel that it was God's will to have America kind of trend in this direction, and that the southern states seceding are trying to go against God's will. And I'm sure if you transcribed firsthand accounts of Southern soldiers fighting in the war, they'd also be citing God as their reason for fighting. So there's a ton of contradiction. It's horrible to think like brother against brother, not in this case, but like neighbor against neighbor, because in the end, like as Americans, we are all on the same team. But this was our true low point. And so they fight together for some time. by all accounts, very gallantly and heroically. We have first-hand accounts of leading charges with swords drawn, guns a-blazing. We also have very human pieces. We have Allyne is watching a freed slave child play in their camp after they had liberated a town. And he's writing home to his wife about how he reminds him of his son. We have Allyne writing home to his wife about how their son must get a rocking horse because he wants him to be like his father. Some real human moments like that. Also mixed in are these very vivid and like real depictions of battles. And so, unfortunately, in late February, early March of 1864, there's a special mission to capture the Confederate capital of Richmond. They're going to free prisoners, burn down the city, and kill Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Now, none of this was ever confirmed by the Union Army. After the war, the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, would find the order that the Confederates later took off of a dead colonel and remove it from the National Archives and likely destroy it. We're unsure. But we do know happened for a fact is there was this raid on Richmond. The motivations behind it are still debated by historians. Essentially, though, goal, take the city, kill the Confederate president, a real, like, let's end the war tonight mentality. Obviously, we know as people living in 2025 that the Civil War does not end in March of 1864. It ends in April of 1865. So, essentially, you have a regiment coming in to the city from the north and the south. Lucius and Allyne are coming in from the south. The regiment from the north the James River is flooded. They can't cross. They're eventually ambushed and either all killed or captured. Coming from the south, we have a Lucius and Allyne side by side in the thick of battle. It's nighttime. It's a mixture of rain and snow. And Allyne, leading the soldiers, turns to his younger brother, Lucius, and says, I can hold this position but not for much longer. You need to go tell the general. And Lucius is going to ride off to go find the general. And unfortunately, at this point, these two are going to become separated. And Allyne is trying to rally the men. They find themselves surrounded. And they try to escape. And Allyne actually finds himself kind of within the edges of the Confederate camp. And think about it. It's dark. It's raining. It's snowing. Allyne is banking on the fact that his blue uniform doesn't look that different from a gray uniform when it's soaking wet and it's dark out. So we have accounts of this, puts on his best Southern accent and tries to sneak his way out of the camp. And 100%. And as far as we can tell, he gets to the edge of the woods and he's about to mount his horse. And he hears a gun click behind him. And a rebel soldier tells him, get down, Yankee. You're my prisoner now. And unfortunately, Allyne is going to spend the rest of the war in some pretty terrible Confederate prison camps. And Lucius is going to be promoted in his older brother's absence. And by all accounts, fight very gallantly and bravely. The other piece to this is we have Susan, along with her other sisters, as well as her parents, Ira and Susan, back home, giving us like a real firsthand account of the home front on the war, right? Like everybody is very supportive of the war effort. They want the Union preserved. They want the Southern states to end their rebellion. That being said, like they miss their family. They feel like their family has done enough. They kind of reach a certain point in the letters where their language shifts to almost I think we've done enough, let other people finish the job mentality, which shows that like even with, and I know like the country, we view ourselves as a divided country now. Like let's think about a time where we're literally fighting a war against ourselves. Even with these circumstances on the line, like the personal family struggles do hit a breaking point where they're like, our national identity is so important to us, but we can only take so much. So it's all these like real like facts and firsthand accounts of battles and raids and these very exciting things, but they're all supported by these real like human emotions. And it's fantastic to kind of watch it unfold almost in real time when you're flipping through letters and you see that somebody's attitude is changing day to day based on what's going on around them.
Wow.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I know I just went on like for a long time there. But
Yeah, well, yeah, what a story. But yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So, you've already discussed, the whole progress that you've made regarding this project. What would you say is your end goal?
The end goal is to share the story with as many people as possible, right? And so, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say my dream is like, if I could get a call from Netflix, like, we want to tell this story, that's the dream. Where do I sign? But at the very least, like, and I kind of touched upon this earlier, it's telling the story in a way where we can bring it to younger generations and really like change the way they're interacting with the past. So obviously, if Netflix isn't going to call, how do we approach that? And that's to create, I'd say, video content. We obviously, like, we're publishing long form blogs right now that really do have an emphasis on storytelling, but long form articles aren't what's really going to do it. That's why we want to start moving into developing this digital content, starting a podcast, and really putting an emphasis on the storytelling so we can maximize the amount of people who are engaging with the story.
What would you say are some of your project's biggest needs at the moment?
Thank you for asking. So, biggest needs, obviously, are with any kind of research project like this, are funding, right? We're very lucky to work with Hands On History. They're a nonprofit out of Topsfield, Massachusetts, and they've very generously helped us raise some funds to bring on a incredibly talented transcription team that is working through these letters. But obviously, the more funds we raise, the more members of our transcription team we can have, the more hours they can, the ones who are already on the team can invest, and that'll help expedite the process at which we get through these letters, because that's the real blocker. We're about halfway through a collection of 500 to 600 primary source documents from the 1860s. And beyond raising funds, we're really just looking for eyes and ears. We want people to take time and engage with the story. We're looking for people to read the articles we have published, follow our social pages, and as they do that, hopefully build not just like a follower base, but almost like a sort of community. Get people really engaged in this story we're telling. And we don't want to tell people what to think, but maybe lead you down the right path and let you draw your own conclusions on, here's what happened in the past, how can we learn from it?
You already kind of touched on, like, how people, on like, engaging people. Are there any other ways that people can get involved with this?
I mean, I'm happy to sit down and have a discussion with anybody that wants to talk about it. But if there's anyone out there who is familiar with early American handwriting, and it's not too dissimilar from modern cursive, though it has its unique quirks, we'd be beyond happy to take on volunteers who can transcribe letters for us, as well as anyone really with the ability to help us produce content and with the bandwidth to do so. Because right now, I'm taking on the majority of that load and letting the rest of the team focus on the actual historical research. Obviously, that's where their skill sets are, and that's where my skill sets are. But we're definitely looking to scale up or scale down, I guess, the timeline in which we're accomplishing this right now.
What do you hope that this project will really bring to those who, get to know the story?
I think if we took a little bit more time learning about the first American Civil War, we'd spend a little less time posting about or preparing for a second Civil War, right? And even from like where I sit, right, and I we all have our views, and I'll keep mine personal. But it's clear nobody's reaching across like they should be, and it's easy to say, well, they're wrong, right? And whoever, and we all have our own they, right? But we just let's look back not too far into our past in the grand scheme of things, right? Like America has not actually been around for that long. And we had one of these, right? I refer to the first and hopefully only American Civil War as our nation's low point. We should be looking at that, looking at the real cost of life and everything that went into that, and be doing absolutely everything in our power to make sure that never happens again. And it is my hope that people engaging with this story, and it's one thing to see, like, okay, the Battle of Gettysburg, like, thousands of people died. Okay. Like, there was thousands of people 160 something years ago. Like, that's, for me as a normal person in 2025, a little hard to connect with that. But if I can open this up and I can see, oh my God, this family, like, this son lost his father. This was this man's last words as he was talking to his friend. Like, you don't have that with the American Civil War. We have, like, World War II movies and these things where you can really see, like, the human element to it, and it's not lost on you. And it wasn't like, and I'm just going to stick with World War II, it wasn't that long ago. So it's pretty easy for me to, like, identify with that and understand what happened there and how this can never happen again. But when you start getting into things where there's no video, only black and white photos, you don't know anyone that was there, you don't even know anybody's grandfather that was there, it's pretty hard to connect with that. And I think that's why we're so quick to kind of turn down this path of, like, this is the worst it's ever been and it can't get better. And it's like, all right, let's stop for a second. It has been worse, and it has gotten better. It never got perfect. In many ways, we're still healing from the Civil War, right? And we don't even realize it because we're so far removed. But yeah, in conclusion, I know it's a long way of saying that. If I wrap this up in a bow, let's spend some more time learning about the causes and the effects of the first American Civil War, and let's put our country's full effort behind making sure that it never happens again.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. So this project is only successful because of the team that I have, that I work with. And this is Sydney, Isaac, and Lenny. Lenny's our youngest team member. He's a junior at Hillsdale College in Michigan, mock trial, and just big fan of U.S. history. This is actually not his first time doing a project transcribing primary source documents from the Civil War. We're beyond thankful to have him on the team. Isaac, I've known the longest. He was the grad student at the University of Michigan I called when I needed the pictures of the letters. He's just a super, like, compassionate and caring individual, and he's always very quick to identify with the real human side of the soldiers. We have a group chat, and he'll regularly text, like, just read a heartbreaking letter. Allyne misses his wife so much. He said X, Y, and Z. And so we're beyond thankful to have him as a member of our transcription team. And then heading the charge, we got Sydney. Sydney is our chief curator and historian. We met her through Hands On History. Their founder, Tim, had her curate a collection for Hands On History. She did a fantastic job, introduced her to us, and she's just been beyond helpful. Not only does she transcribe hundreds of these letters, she developed the system we use for categorizing and cataloging them, as well as, like, all these supporting documents of research based on, like, the society and culture of the time, family tree to help our transcribers link who people are talking to and what their connections are. And she is also not taking a traditional historian's route. She's, rather than working in some sort of museum or institution, she works with our project as chief curator and historian, and is also the founder of Lakes Region Curation. And so her and her team are actually available for contracted projects, whether it be curating an exhibit for organizations of any size to projects as cool as diving into somebody's family history and helping them really uncover the story there. So we are beyond thankful for Sydney, Isaac, and Lenny, as well as Hands On History, who's helped us get the ball rolling here. There's, we have a lot more ahead of us, but we're in the thick of it right now. So.
All right. Ryan, thank you very, very much for coming in.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it.